Welcome to the What's Already podcast, where we fashion ourselves television judge and jury. My name is JJ Crowder. I'm here with my co-hosts Mattson
Better read than dead,
and Alec Burgess.
Let's get it.
We appreciate you tuning in. Go ahead and hit all those fun buttons like, subscribe, follow, bell notification, any other buttons you might feel like hitting in the moment. I'm okay with that too. Tell a friend about us, or a lot of friends. We appreciate help growing the podcast. That's about the extent of it. We're here live to talk about Andor, season 1, episode 7. It took a little gear change, but still grounded in the same.
Well, you knew it was going to slow down a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, but I think there was enough intrigue and enough changes and kind of like watching I like watching the rebellion grow from a different perspective. Like, you just assume that it was smooth, right? Like, you're like, here's this rebellion, they got it figured out. But I often forget, like, even after watching Rebels, like things like that, like I often forget that we came in at the end or near the end of this whole thing, not the beginning, right? Like, so it's interesting to see that other side of it where we're seeing the beginning. And I really liked Mon Mothma for the first time this season, because we're seeing that she is trying to play smart and maybe overly cautious in a way, but seeing her and Luthen at odds was really kind of cool. Like, showing that there's definitely different perspectives. She didn't know about this whole thing. Like, this was just a him thing. Yeah, I like
this.
That
Wasn't what I signed up for. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, once again, Stellan Skarsgård just chews up scenery whenever he's on the screen. Like, playing, like, the going back and forth, like, to the smiling face, like putting on the grin and all that shit, and then that like threatening, menacing tone that he puts in his voice when he's telling her, get your shit together and quit bitching. Like, this is what it is. So I really enjoyed that whole conversation in his store.
Yeah, it was pretty clever. And it really kind of, for me anyway, I like what they're doing with Cassian, because this dude kind of put the rebellion into motion, and he does not want any part of it. Yeah. He can't take credit for what he did, but he's essentially started the rolling of the rebellion. And it just cracks me up that he's like the reluctant rebellion leader at this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the fact that his like adopted mom is full on into it now because of what he did to make money to get them out of there. Like, it's like the irony abounds. It's yeah. And what a shitty place to have to be. Though I'm interested where they're going with him too, now that he's apparently headed to some sort of either work camp or jail or something based on
6 years.
Man, it's a shame we don't have Javier on this podcast for this episode. He'd have some things to say.
It's true. Cops in the Star Wars universe are just as corrupt. As if you didn't know.
I really, as you guys heard me talk about in this show, really enjoy the ISB perspective, as you kind of talked about, JJ, the other side of things. Even you were talking about the Rebel side, but I really appreciate the Empire side, where we just saw fighting, obviously, Invader and stormtroopers that couldn't aim. But this time around, we're seeing the people that really were trying to investigate. Obviously, they're trying to do deep cover stuff to find out some of these similarities, these linkages, and I'm really enjoying what's happening at these meetings and kind of the inner political squalor, because a lot of the Star Wars books that I've read, like, Coruscant's a cutthroat place. You put on the shine and the smiles, but behind the scenes, I mean, people are ready to get you at a moment's notice. And I think they're doing a really good job of showing kind of the ins and outs of, even in the Empire, it's not like it's all cushy.
Yeah. I'm seeing why Palpatine dissolved the Senate, dissolved like all the government programs, and took over nearing, the original trilogy timeline. Because even the ISB is a hot mess of corruption and maneuvering, and nobody's on the same team. They're still against each other. Like, shoot. So one of the Empire lasted as long as it did.
Absolutely. Well, and there was a nice little cameo from Rebels and Star Wars and Clone Wars, for that matter, with General Yularen, the guy in the ISB that was telling him where you have open.
Oh, that guy? Okay.
Yeah, the white-haired with the big bushy mustache. So he's a character that has been in. He was sitting at the table with Vader when he was choking the guy, like, your lack of faith is disturbing. He's in this white uniform in the back of the table, watching that argument happen. He worked closely during the Clone Wars with Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. So you saw him as a younger man in those quickly. And so he was there. And then you saw him later in Rebels as well. He becomes a really close ally with Grand Admiral Thrawn. So sorry, I got to block a user. We're getting spammed.
I guess I should have known that, having read the books, but his name didn't jive with me. What did I want to... There was something I wanted to ask.
Well, while Mattson's thinking about it, dude, what is with Star Wars, man? First we were in the Scottish Highlands, now we're at Miami Beach.
Oh, yeah.
Like, their locations are really vamping up as opposed to, what we
Except
get
they don't believe in
movies.
sitting on the sand. They are on like these cool, like, terraced cement patios. I was like,
yeah, no. Those are so uncomfortable. Get on the sand.
I think it was supposed to be some sort of like racetrack, like water, like big gambling thing that was going on. I think that's what that, if I remember, because it was like something about races or something. I'd have to go back and rewatch the episode, but it looked to me like that was what we were looking at, was some sort of like racetrack.
Palindrome. Well,
yeah, kind of. So I don't know if they were doing
cool.
like water races of some sort, but
it's pod racing.
Pod racing over the water.
kind of reminded me of in... I'm not sure which Star Wars, when they went to that gambling planet. Remember, it was like
Last Jedi.
Yeah, The Last Jedi. Something similar to that. I mean,
yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was there was just a lot of interesting things that I wasn't expecting. I'm also really enjoying, again, going back to the guy that we saw that got caught up in the whole corpo issue that was tracking him down and got in trouble, and now he's working for his uncle, I guess. Like, that was
center.
Yeah, in like a call center type thing. But I'm curious because it was a weird end scene for the episode. I'm wondering, because I don't read the language like some deep cut nerds do, but I'm sure somebody will translate what he was seeing on his screen at the end. But for them to end it in that way, it felt like he had something to do with where Andor ended up, right? Like, that's what it felt like to me. But I don't know, like, he's in charge of like some sort of fuel thing, so I don't know how he would find that. So I'm interested to see what happened, but that's what that felt like. Why would they put him there looking over something, clicking on some things? I just didn't understand why that was the end of the episode, unless he was involved somehow. Or maybe he's seeing the intake records but he didn't use his real name. He used that fake name, so I don't know. And did we have a time jump because all of a sudden dude's got a girlfriend?
I guess so. There was some sort of time jump. It looked like he was counting his cut pretty closely there.
Yeah.
From his loot. So he spent some time, I think, in this paradise, I guess.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I feel like there were some questions that I had because I was like, we jumped to some weird places, and I don't feel like I got any explanation yet. So
yeah, like the fact that now Vel's going to be trying to kill him.
Yeah,
Corpo's coming after him. The safest place he can be is an Imperial prison.
No shit.
Yeah, funny. They're not going to be able to kill him in there. It's the last place they're going to want to go.
Yeah.
Also, in that scene, that same robot that we see in Rogue One. I'm assuming.
USO.
I feel like it's alluded to because it wasn't already kind of fully listening to instructions. That's how he's going to break out of prison. Is something to do with that robot. That's my theory.
I think that's a pretty sound theory. It's sound theory, yeah.
Because I don't know why you introduce a robot in that way and show that kind of that scene. I feel like there's more to come with that.
Yeah,
I know at some point they have to hook up. So
sure, yeah, whether it's that one or another version of the K2 droid.
Sure.
But yeah, for sure that's good. And I was excited, but I was like, oh, it seems a little early for K2 to get involved, doesn't it? But so it was interesting to see the interaction there. But yeah, I think it's heading towards him figuring out how to hack one to get out for sure.
I did like K2 got his beach walk.
Yeah.
That was cracking me up.
Yeah.
The entire time.
Hell yeah. Well, I just hope if we do see actual K2 that Alan Tudyk comes back, but I haven't seen him.
I have to.
Because Alan Tudyk is amazing. Guy does some serious voice work. So
does he do a lot of it for Star Wars?
He does it for everybody.
Yeah, he does a lot of voice work across a lot of shows, but he has done a lot of voice work for some of the games for Star Wars, some of the cartoons, the animated versions. So yeah, he's been involved in a bit, but that was his probably biggest role was K2 in that movie. So I'm interested. I still think this Mira, is that her name? What's the ISB agent?
Yeah, Mira.
The blonde one?
Yeah, I still think that's going to end up being his sister. It just can't. It just feels like they're on too much of a collision course for it not to be a connection there.
Well, there's no way she's dead. The mom even came on and said like it's a lost cause, everyone's dead. But you know when shows say that they're just setting it up for it to be the opposite.
Yeah. And that was part of what, like that whole conversation and the fact that the sister came up again I feel like that's going to be her. And at some point she's going to either take a bullet for him or I don't know.
Flop and then she's going to die.
Yeah. Something weird's going to happen. But I did enjoy the scene, that scene in the ISB where she just freaking flays that dude open that was trying to get her in trouble. And the freaking commander or the general was like, man, I'm going to have to think about some things here. Well played. And then immediately he's like, watch your back because I'm not going to protect you, but I like what you're doing here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. The ISB is, it's dirty and I like it. I think it's an interesting showing of the power of the Empire.
It kind of reminds
really
me of like
core.
how people treat like military police. No one really likes when you're investigating or like internal affairs for any agency for that matter. Like no one really likes them because when they're investigating, you're going after your own, and nobody likes that.
Yeah. Well, and the ISB obviously has like no, like they'll go after anybody.
They're like the Gestapo of Star Wars.
Pretty much like CIA mixed with.
Because now, I mean, they basically just did their own Patriot Act.
Yeah.
Prod. They're coming to anything that connects to criminal activity related or slightly related. I mean, that's a blanket statement. Like you sneeze in the Empire's direction, they could arrest you for a year. Could have been a day. Now they upped it to a year. Like heaven forbid, man. Like, whew.
Yeah. Well, and that was like one of the interesting pieces too, where she gets mad because she's like, we're just playing into their hands. This is what they want. They want us to overreact because then it turns more people against the Empire and what we're doing. And I thought that was extremely intelligent writing to talk about the fact that an oppressive government creates as much dissent as it does fear and control, right? Because the more aggressive you are, the more people are going to fight against it. It's kind of like when you're caught in a trap, the tighter it gets, the worse you fight, but the worse you fight, the tighter it gets. So it's kind of this weird, symbiotic relationship with a terrible government per se. And then they people that don't want to be oppressed. But then you also have the flip side that you can do a lot of powerful things with a government if you're subtle about it, right? You have to find that balance. And that's the frightening part about power in general, is if you can learn how to use it, if you're smart about it, oofty, can be not good. So I like this whole power dynamic. I like what they're doing with the Empire, and how some of them are recognizing that they're going too far, or you have Luthen who's using, his understanding of that and people to say, yeah, it's going to be shitty for people, but we want that because we want them to be mad. We want them to be upset. We want them to fight. And so I'm really enjoying the political piece of this, and I don't usually enjoy political type shows like this, but I'm loving this dark underbelly of the Empire and what's happening on both sides of it.
You said it. That's what I was trying to ask earlier, is that little scene. I mean, it was something that when we came to Star Wars originally, when you were however old you were, and when I was as young as I was, we just jumped into it. It was already going down. It had been going down, and the cat was out of the bag. Like the Empire wasn't just starting this up. There was open rebellion at that point. But you wonder, because you think 80 million credits in the grand scheme of things, what does that really mean to the Empire? Like at the end of the day, 80 million from
more.
Yeah, like 80 million from the U.S. government. All things considered, you could go overreact, or you could be secretive about it, still like lay the hammer down. But they publicly broadcast. They made it a big thing, a public display of force, when they could have done the same thing but done it quietly, and probably not furthered a lot of the agenda of these rebels looking for a cause. And so I just think it's, like you talked about, a really interesting response, and the Empire seeing it as a way to flex their might, when in reality, if they could do hindsight later on, they'd probably be like, maybe we should have approached that from a more subtle perspective.
I want to know who squealed to the media, because someone on Aldani spilled the beans. Like, that wasn't a news story until someone talked.
Yeah.
And then they let the media run wild with it. Now everybody knows.
It's true. Well, and from a
very Empire thing,
but it could have been the rebels as well that leaked it further on to further their cause, which I could see why they would do that.
Yeah. For me, from the imperial side, like thinking about what you were just talking about, Mattson, like for me, I would, if I'm this dastardly government, I would have rounded up random ass people and publicly executed them, and then printed off, like you said, I'd get a bunch of credits and say, we've reclaimed these credits. They were caught. Here's what happens. You know what I mean? Like, and then we go back to, we appreciate all those that were involved in informing and helping us find, and you give the public credit to, the public, due to tips, whatever, helped us catch these people, even though the government, the Empire doesn't care. You can just execute random people and say it was seriously, like,
who's gonna question you?
Yeah, exactly. Who's gonna question you? So at that point, like, you're giving credit to the public, you're showing that we've caught, if you try this, we're going to catch you, even though they didn't. Like, so I'm with you. Like, I think there's a lot of ways that they could handle it differently, instead of having this all-out panic and then like constricting down and tightening up and making people uncomfortable and scared all the time. Just act like you fixed it and it's done, and then you slowly, piece by piece, start to tighten up in areas. And then so I think you could be much more subtle about it. But I think that's always been the Empire invaders' problem, is they don't want to be subtle. Well, obviously Palpatine was subtle for a very long time, but now that he's in control, he looks at himself and goes, who's going to overtake me? Who's going to win? I cannot be beat, so I do not care. So it's an interesting twist on how it went. Charles popping in. Good question, though. Just catching your commentary. Did you feel the episode was too slow?
Yes.
No, I didn't.
I didn't either.
I was just going to say basically what we've already been saying, Charles. You can catch up when you go back and listen. But there's so much political turmoil and these backstories at ISB to the beginnings of the rebellion. Like, I like all these storylines coming together, and I really don't mind, especially after a very chaotic and almost finalistic middle episode. I kind of expected this, but it was better than I thought. We're getting a lot of juicy backstory and details that we've never had in the Star Wars universe, at least for me, presented in this way, and I'm eating it up. That's what I like about this show, is it's a completely different perspective to things that I know, but haven't seen it developed in this way before.
Yeah. And I think I was prepared for it, kind of what you were saying there, Mattson. I knew after last week, in fact, we talked about it during our live show last episode, where it was like, it's a hard act to follow because that episode was so action-packed and so intense. Coming out of that, you have to really be careful how you lay it out. So I thought they did a really good job, and I knew that it was going to feel slower than it probably actually was. So when coming into it, it didn't feel very slow to me. But I thought one thing that was really genius from a showrunner perspective was we had far less Cassian in this episode than I anticipated. So I liked that because it took the distraction of, well, here's all this downtime with Andor, as opposed to now I'm looking at all these other characters and how they're reacting to what happened last week versus, well, it just happened and now shit sucks. So I thought that's why I liked it and I was okay with it.
Happened
it was
last
slow,
week.
But...
The Empire's going down. And now...
Yeah.
Alec, tell us your tale of why this was too slow for you.
Oh, it was just slow moving. I still liked it, but it was kind of, there was parts where it's dragging, like when he went back to Ferrix, and then he just took his sweet time leaving again. And then again with, the Mon Mothma stuff was cool, but it was like, let's go type of a thing, get a move on. I don't need 10 minutes of her speaking in code to whatever public official was visiting from her home planet in order to get the point across.
It was a banker, right?
It was somebody. I don't know.
Yeah,
home planet. Someone who could get access to her family fortune and send her money. It was just, there was points where it was moving slowly for me, and I was like, oh, come on.
Well, it's probably the walking scene of that one chick that took like
45
seconds.
long.
That they could have slimmed down a little bit. Yeah, I get that you were trying to shake a tail and go far away from where you started. Great. Let's just get there.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great episode, but there was points in it where I was like, okay,
sure,
you can trim some of this down and still have a really good show. I feel like that's probably my biggest gripe with the show so far, is it takes its sweet time in a lot of moments and then just kind of rushes up to the end.
At least these things still have a point overall, and like She-Hulk, for instance, where we have complete episodes that could be omitted.
It's true. No, I will agree that I think there could have been some better editing and trimming down on this because, like you say, there was some dragged out. Like I didn't think, while I appreciated the conversation with the dude from her home planet, it took too long. There was too much. Yeah, it took way too long. And then, like you say, the Luthen's assistant or whatever, I was like, oh my God, get there already. Come on. I don't need to watch you walk the entire planet of freaking Coruscant. Like, Jesus. So no, I'm with you on that. But I think this is one of the longest episodes of the season so far at 53 minutes. And I think that runtime is too long for an episode like this, especially a slower build-up episode. You could have got the same effect by editing it down to maybe like 43 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Can we talk about, I still am disappointed with Star Wars technology. What is this little TV screen they got going on? Like they're living, they got technology out the like everything from the little dial the guy's turning at the end of the episode. I'm like, the technology here looks like we stepped back into the 80s and we're in Star Wars. Like I just don't get it.
The galaxy that Star Wars takes place is perpetually locked in the 80s.
Apparently. I mean, what do you have to say about that, JJ? Because I chuckled to myself and I said, like, where's the tech? It looks like we're frozen.
I mean, it is kind of a victim of its own time frame. So, like, because of when it became successful, you can't just. It's kind of like one of my gripes, and it's not even a gripe of mine, but one of the things that I found myself as a huge Star Wars fan always defending is. That's great. Got to put that out there. Charles, some of the tech causes a ginge cringe. Looks like leftover from 2001. I love that, Charles. Yeah, so like when the prequel movies came out, like the world was beautiful and the tech looked a lot more fancy because of, at that time George Lucas threw in a bunch of the really nice CGI that wasn't there previously.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you explain it is this was a time of peace and prosperity versus the original trilogy was a time of war, and so that's why it looked a little grungier, a little dirtier, wasn't quite as pretty. That explanation's there. Well, Star Wars is always going to suffer from the fact that it was successful in the 70s in this early 80s when there wasn't the tech to have the cool stuff. And so it has to stay somewhat similar to what it was when it first came out, because otherwise my toxic friends in the Star Wars
they freak
community
out. It
will
always
lose
makes me
their
laugh though
shit.
when you see that like plexiglass board that has the lines. They were looking at that earlier. I'm like, what the hell are you even? Look at what? Like, focus in on what quadrant? Look, what are we finding? Oh, you found something there? A dot? And what does that dot say? Like, what the fudge? We have 3D Google Maps. You're looking at a 2D rendering of dots on a map. Like, tell me what the F that means. That just makes me laugh. Because, yes, you're right. They changed that shiz. The whole Star Wars nerd clan's freaking out. So I get
I'm gonna
it.
riot.
It just makes me chuckle because I'm like, that TV screen looked like it was from like the 70s. What, they just got color on Coruscant? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, pretty much. No, it's always been a weird problem with Star Wars. Is just, again, but that's because when you have a 40-year-old, 50-year-old almost original that you're still trying to grow, you
I
can't
cannot
update.
believe. When did the first Star Wars, when did it premiere?
77, right?
Yeah,
Jeez.
77.
There's gonna be
47
some big
years
celebration
Yeah,
here
77.
real soon. That's nuts.
Yeah, I've been looking at tickets trying to see if I can get, because I know they're going to have because they do the celebration, Star Wars celebration every couple years. I'm sure that they're going to do one for the 50th.
It's going to be the biggest it's ever been.
Nutty. So I keep watching to see, because they usually only do the tickets a couple years out. So 2027, I will be for sure looking, because I had tickets in the cart for the 30th anniversary in 2007, and when it was one of the original, it was one of the early on celebrations. And I kick myself constantly when I think about it, because it was so cool. And then I was going to go to the 40th, but it just wasn't, like, I wasn't in the place to do that. So yeah, but
well, you got no excuses now if you don't go to this one. I'm like,
exactly. I think if I don't go for the 50th, I'm gonna be too damn old and tired to go for the 60th. I think if I wait till 2037 and I'm like 56 years old, I might be old. I'm like, I don't know if I can keep up with all that shit at this point, but 46 years old, I think I can.
Hey, we'll put you in a little Yoda hover thing.
I'm down. I'm down. I like it. But yeah, I want to go to Celebration really bad. I think it would be dope as hell. So, because I am a bit of a nerd. I mean, I don't know what would give it away, but
yeah, I don't know where
I'm not buying it.
Or just the noise on your phone.
Yeah, I mean, R2 goes off every time somebody texts me. So, but I'm really happy with Andor so far. I'm excited to see where we go. I hope we at least get a couple more episodes with some action in them. But so far, I've been really far more pleased with the political intrigue and the scope of these heist feeling and this like sneaking around, just clandestine stuff that I thought I would be. I thought I was gonna be bored.
Does Disney Plus have Darth Vader? Or I mean, I say, of course they could have Darth Vader show, but like Hayden Christensen on retainer, could he just pop in on like in Andor on some episode and just show up in like a cameo? Because that would be dope.
I'm sure he could. I feel like most of the people that have done major Star Wars shows would just come to do them to be in another show. Like, I really feel like it wouldn't be difficult to get these cameos, but they also have to tread they have to tread lightly, because if you throw in Vader in every show.
Yeah, which is fair. And what I like about this is they haven't done that. So I guess don't do that, but maybe in season 2 or 3 would be cool. Give me that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it would be cool, like the last season, right? So the lead up to Rogue One.
Yeah.
You have this thing has gone on for so long, and Cassian Andor's name is so big in the rebellion that Vader's taken a personal notice to at least the name, right? Like it's gone that far up the ranks. Like I could see that being a logical progression for how this show and how the character goes. But yeah, I don't want them to force it. That's because I even sometimes with The Mandalorian, like I feel like season 2 forced. Look, I love Ahsoka and I'm glad she was there, but like, especially, I don't feel like The Mandalorian forced it, but I certainly feel like Boba Fett forced having her in there with the Luke Skywalker scene with, being training, like that whole scene. I was like, you might as well just be watching The Mandalorian, not Boba Fett. So I don't want them to force in characters just to say, hey, this character's in it. Like I like it when it means something. But I'm with Charles on this because hey, remember, I caught freaking Mark Hamill in the back of.
Yeah, I still don't know how you did that.
In the back of the Mandalorians, or in the back of Obi-Wan. So maybe have him walk in the background, Easter egg. I think that's perfect. I'll find him. I'll see him. I blew Alec's brain on Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I'd love for them to drop in General Thrawn at some point just to see him because he's around. He's got some friends in the ISB.
Well, he's really good. Well, he ends up being really good friends with that General yeah, I can't pronounce his name right off the top of my head now. Luvarin or Lu. I don't know why it's gone away from me since the last time I said it, but I think they're holding off on him for Ahsoka, for the Ahsoka show, because he's going to be, they've cast him already. And
fair. Well, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what they have coming and the rest of this show. Especially we're whittling down here in a couple of weeks. This is going to be the only live show we're doing for a minute, so pretty excited. Cool. Any other thoughts on Andor, episode 7? All right. Well, that would be that then. Appreciate it. Whose turn is it?
I'll go.
Okay, I'm going to say it's Mattson's turn.
If you don't know how to listen to us and you're listening to this live show right now, you can check us out wherever good podcasts can be found. And What's Our Verdict reviews on Apple and Spotify, Stitcher, Ghana, you name it. If you want to continue to listen to this live show every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific F Central Time, you can check us out on YouTube and Facebook at What's Our Verdict. If you would like to really get into the weeds like our super listener Charles here, you can check us out on our Patreon at What's Our Verdict podcast, where you can listen to exclusive trailers, have us review a show that you want us to watch, or vote on what we're going to be watching in the upcoming months as well. We'd love for you to support the podcast and help us grow there as well. And then you can find us on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. TikTok, we got a lot of just fun content. Haven't seen the Tiger in a while. Hopefully we'll see him soon. And yeah, we just appreciate you all taking the time to listen to us, and continue to hit that follow, like, and subscribe button.
Thanks, Mattson. I feel like there's some kinky spider tiger shit going on back there in the background. Is there like a dog thrown in the mix to that too?
That's Mickey Mouse.
Even better. That's kinky.
Don't take this video down, Disney.
Yeah. Speaking of that, the Patreon, if Charles is still on and listening, the new content coming soon to the Patreon. I've been working on getting some stuff ready, so we'll have a nice data dump for you here coming quick. Yeah, cool. There it is. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one. Cinematic out.